At 8:14 now with an investigation into a residential facility in Massachusetts using a highly controversial device on people with disabilities.
This is the only place in the world that uses a therapy on children with disabilities, many with severe autism, that the UN has called torture. The Judge Rotenberg Center of Canton, Massachusetts. They've been doing it for 30 years.
Autism Speaks was started in 2005 by Bob Wright to help his grandson who was autistic. Wright started Autism Speaks to end what he thought was an epidemic after finding out that there was no cure for autism. Autism Speaks received an investment of $25 million from Bernard Marcus, a co-founder of Home Depot and still active on the Autism Speaks board today. So what's the problem? The problem is, Autism Speaks still supports companies like this one.
Families of those involved vigorously defend the practice, but human rights advocates passionately condemn it. And we'll bring NBC senior investigative correspondent Cynthia McFadden in right there. Cynthia, good morning.
Good morning. Well, that's right. If currently 55 people are attached to this device, some of them with profound autism. They're on the device 24 hours a day when they sleep, when they shower. Now, advocates say that it helps control them, that they can better control themselves so they don't harm themselves or others. I began reporting on this facility back in 2007 and wanted to know how painful the shock, the skin shock was. They hooked me up to the device, and I can tell you, it hurts. It really hurts. I asked the founder, Dr. Matthew Israel, about that. He said, to work, it has to hurt. Now, the price tag is $275,000 per person per year.
The abuse is happening every single day. And
Human rights lawyer Eric Rosenthal is outraged.
People tied down, screaming, stop, stop, it hurts, please stop. You don't have to be a human rights lawyer to know there's something deeply wrong here.
But Mark Pereira says the reality when he worked at JRC before its founder left was not so rosy. He says he witnessed shocks for a range of what he saw as everyday behaviors.
Rocking, spinning, running back and forth.
These aren't self-harm behaviors.
They're not hurting themselves. They're not hurting anybody.
He says he quit after 2 years because of what he saw as abuse. The worst, an incident involving a girl who was nonverbal as well as deaf and blind.
I also said that I wasn't following the rules at home because they had set forth their own list of rules that I had to follow while I was at home. You see, JRC is very controlling, and they need to control you in everything you do. Even when I'm at home and not there, they had the need to control everything I do and to know everything I did when I was home. A couple of the rules were like I couldn't drink caffeine after 2 p.m. and I had to go to bed by 10 p.m. And my mom didn't really enforce those rules because I was a grown adult. Now you might ask, Jennifer, why didn't you just leave that place? Or why didn't your mom sign you out of that place? And the answer is JRC had gotten an appointed guardian over me, which means that I was no longer in control of where I stayed, and my mom wasn't either. They had a court-ordered guardian who had signed me into JRC.
Serious concerns about abuses in the past.
Mike Flamia has represented the JRC for 30 years.
Mistakes were made, but that happens in every treatment program in the country. You will have people say, I did not have a good experience there. They didn't treat me right.
But this isn't just like they didn't treat me right. This is tying someone down to a restraint board and shocking them 31 times. I mean, nobody could defend that, correct? You're not defending that.
The treatment for that client worked beautifully. On that day, it didn't work. And they should have, with hindsight, they should have stopped the treatment earlier that day. But the treatment, he did extremely well here.
In 2009, the company released an ad called I Am Autism, and in it, is majority white males. The belief for a long time was that autism was a disease that only occurred in white boys.
Autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails.
The main problem with this commercial is that all of the children are white. Autism is diverse, just like anything else. There are humans of all different kinds on the autism spectrum. We've all seen the campaigns for Black Lives Matter, but that intersectionality connects to autism as well. Racism is arguably a part of any community. Whether it's a religion, a country, or a small town, there's bound to be someone who can't stand the idea that people deserve to be treated with respect no matter who they are. The biggest issue, however, is that racism is also involved when diagnosing, because it was thought to be mostly in white boys. Autism Speaks has also portrayed narratives that aren't true and worked with white supremacists, including former President Donald Trump, a friend of the founder and promoter of anti-vax beliefs. The company also supports ABA therapy, which is considered the gold standard of therapy for autistics, but widely regarded as an abusive practice among many in the community. The JRC, or Judge Rotenberg Center, as seen in the previous clip, was given a platform by Autism Speaks in the past and is one of the most extreme forms of ABA, with the UN calling the electric shocks given there torture.
It's in the CDC's own statistics, where the reported autism rate among Black 8-year-olds, 13.2 kids per every 1,000, lags the rate among white 8-year-olds by nearly 20%. Among Latino children, the gap is even larger at 50%.
Tennis?
Anthony is a clinician and researcher who works with a lot of kids who have autism, like 9-year-old Jaja. She says the undercounting of children of color denies them appropriate care. It happens in part because autism diagnosis is a judgment call on a child's behaviors, and inadvertently,
we have a bias, even though we don't want to, that's what autism looks like.
Tiffany Hammond is a Black and autistic advocate, and you can follow her on Facebook at the link in the description. Tiffany on diagnosis and the ever-popular narrative of grief. If I grieve the diagnosis, I grieve the person. I make no separation because I couldn't carry both sadness and love in equal amounts, in separate ways. And the audacity to think I could behave in a manner consistent with treating my connection with them, rooted in demonstrative displays of love and silent pain, I would never let them know. But pain doesn't remain hidden. It will eventually reflect in how I treat them. I am not without understanding the parental urge for grief shortly after the child's diagnosis. I am a parent. But I think parental fear and grief is foundational within how ableist society is. These feelings are rooted in how society will treat your child. And we never want our children to be mistreated or know pain at the hands of another. We want them to have friends and take care of themselves. And we respond by letting our own feelings take precedence over theirs. We fear society mistreating them. We fear our debts leaving them alone here.
Back to your example about why Black autistic boys are less likely to get a diagnosis, and kind of examining why autism has a stigma in the Black community, and looking at that. But it's these kinds of conversations that need to happen to bring more awareness and give families more information about what's out there and what they can be looking for when they start to see signs.
That's exactly
and then in that way,
right.
training more professionals in the Black community so that they can help people who might not otherwise have access to services.
Exactly right. Yep. Like, even when you bring up something good, it's like, one, a lot of what's missing from autism research is the ethnic and racial minority groups, they're not even really that much in the research.
Mm-hmm.
We also don't look too much at the influence of culture that has on not only how disability plays out in these communities, but how science also looks at us.
The vaccine and came back, and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic.
Donald Trump's onstage response linking vaccines to autism,
at about 30 plaques back,
was heard loud and clear in research labs like this one at OHSU.
It's very reckless to make statements about how vaccines may not be safe, that they may cause autism, which is, as we talked about, completely false.
Dr. Mark Slifka says one man, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, published a study that tested 12 kids, concluding that measles vaccines can cause autism. That was 17 years ago, and Wakefield's report has since been retracted by the medical community that found his research to be fraudulent and unethically financed.
Since that time, there's been over 24 studies. 12 million children have been studied, and there's absolutely no link to autism. And yet the debate still continues.
Continues, and Trump's argument,
autism has become an epidemic,
gives people like Dr. Slifka and others in the scientific community another chance to remind and educate parents about their findings and ongoing research so they can make better informed decisions in the future.
Soldiers of Odin was a partner with Autism Speaks back in 2006. Although marketed as people doing charity, members have been caught in acts of harassment, including towards refugees. Jacob Lasky, a member of the group, was also caught in an anti-Semitic hate crime when he vandalized a synagogue. Following autistic people online and looking in depth into Autism Speaks, I can tell you that it not only doesn't speak for autism, it doesn't even portray autism as it should. Now, what do I mean by that? Disabilities like this one are not linear. They aren't, you have these issues and that's it. No. The spectrum is people of all abilities and intelligence levels, and there is no reason to stigmatize an already marginalized group. Also, just because it doesn't fit a certain experience does not make it any less valid. Autism Speaks was developed in 2005 and made the 1963 puzzle piece logo famous. However, because of lack of knowledge, the symbol was a blue puzzle piece. They thought it was a boy's disease exclusively, with a child crying inside. It was believed that the child was handicapped due to their autism and wouldn't fit in. This is largely problematic, because autism is such a wide range of abilities and strengths. Essentially, I am autistic. Say what you want, believe what you want, but I will never stop fighting. For kids like me, and for people who may not be able to speak verbally, I will always fight for you. I am in your corner no matter what.
I'm gonna send a blood, gonna drown a mind. This is brave, this is bruised.
I am actually autistic.
This is me.